I caught my wife's business partner in our bed, then found out she'd been planning this for 2 years. I was supposed to be in Chicago for a 3-day conference, a mind-numbing affair about logistics software that I'd been dreading for months. My flight was scheduled for noon, but a freak thunderstorm rolled in over the city, grounding everything. The airline sent a curt text at 9 a.m. Flight canceled. My first feeling wasn't annoyance, it was relief, an unexpected 3-day weekend. I decided not to tell my wife, Clara. I'd just drive home, surprise her, and we could order a pizza and watch a movie, a rare, unscheduled moment of normalcy in our busy lives. The drive home was a blur of rain-slicked highways and classic rock. I was already picturing the look on her face, the smile that still, after 10 years of marriage, made my chest feel tight. I pulled into our driveway around 11, noting that her car was there, along with another one. A sleek black Audi I recognized instantly. It belonged to Leo. Leo was my best friend since college. More than that, he was my business partner. We'd built our small logistics company from the ground up together, working out of a garage until we could afford a proper office. He was the brother I never had, the godfather to our dog, a permanent fixture at our dinner table. I smiled, thinking Clara must have invited him over for a coffee to discuss some last-minute details for an upcoming project. It wouldn't be the first time. I let myself in quietly, planning to sneak up on them. The house was silent, which was odd. I dropped my bags by the door and tiptoed through the living room. That's when I heard it, a faint sound from upstairs, a muffled laugh. It was Clara's laugh, but it was different. It was higher, more carefree, the kind of laugh she used to have when we were first dating, before mortgages and business plans and the slow, quiet erosion of time. Another sound joined hers, a low, deep chuckle. Leo. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the sound of two colleagues discussing quarterly reports. It was the sound of intimacy. My feet felt like lead as I climbed the stairs, each step a creaking accusation in the deafening silence of the house. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar, a sliver of light cutting through the dark hallway. I didn't want to look. A primal part of my brain was screaming at me to turn around, to walk out, to get back in the car and pretend this never happened. But my body, propelled by a sick, morbid curiosity, kept moving forward. I reached the door. I pushed it open just enough to see inside. And there they were. Our bed, the one we'd picked out together, the one where we dreamed about our future, was a tangle of white sheets. And in the center of it all were my wife and my best friend. The world didn't just stop. It shattered into a million razor-sharp pieces. The laughter died in their throats as they saw me, their faces a perfect portrait of horror and guilt. But I didn't see their faces. I saw Clara's hand on Leo's chest. I saw the way his arm was wrapped around her, a gesture of possession I had mistaken for friendship 1,000 times before. My mind went blank, a white-hot void of nothingness. There was no anger, no sadness, just a profound, soul-crushing emptiness. I was a ghost in my own life, watching a scene that had nothing to do with me. They started stammering, words tumbling out in a panicked, meaningless jumble, but it was just static. I couldn't process it. My entire reality, the foundation of my world, had just been demolished in a single silent moment. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, a statue carved from ice, before I finally turned and walked away, leaving them to their wreckage. I don't remember walking down the stairs or grabbing my car keys. My body was on autopilot, moving through the motions while my mind was still stuck in that bedroom, a broken projector looping the same horrific scene. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in the driver's seat of my car, the engine off, rain still streaking down the windshield. The world outside was a gray, watery blur, mirroring the chaos inside my head. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. The initial shock was beginning to thaw, and in its place, a cold, sharp-edged rage was starting to form. It wasn't a loud, explosive anger. It was a quiet, calculating fury, a glacier slowly carving its way through my soul. I started replaying every interaction, every late-night business call, every inside joke I hadn't been a part of. It all clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. The business trips they took together to scout new locations. The times she'd come home late, smelling of his cologne, and she'd claimed they'd just been working late at the office. The way he'd look at her across the dinner table, a look I'd always mistaken for brotherly affection, but now recognized for what it was, longing. It was all a lie, a meticulously constructed 2-year-long performance, and I had been the unwitting, gullible audience. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was Clara. Her name on the screen was like a slap in the face. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. A string of text messages began to fill the screen, each one more desperate than the last. "It's not what you think. We can explain. Please, just talk to me." I picked up the phone, and with a steady hand, I powered it off. I didn't want her explanations. I didn't want her lies. I wanted the truth, and I knew I wouldn't get it from her. I sat in that car for hours, watching the rain turn to a drizzle and then stop altogether. The sun began to set, casting long, distorted shadows across the neighborhood. This was my neighborhood. This was my life, or so I thought. The anger was solidifying now, hardening into a resolve. I wasn't going to be a victim in this story. I wasn't going to just pack a bag and walk away, letting them rewrite history and paint me as the unreasonable one. I was going to find out everything, every secret, every lie, every sordid detail. I was going to tear their carefully constructed world apart, piece by piece, and I was going to use their own weapons to do it. I started the car, the engine roaring to life in the quiet twilight. I didn't drive away. I drove to the end of the street, turned around, and parked in the shadows, a predator watching its prey. I waited. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but I knew I wasn't done with that house yet. About an hour later, I saw Leo's black Audi pull out of the driveway and speed down the street. He didn't look back. I waited another 30 minutes, giving Clara time to compose herself, to clean up the evidence, to practice her lines in the mirror. Then I drove back home. I wasn't going back to talk. I was going back to investigate. I was going to find the truth, buried somewhere in the digital and physical wreckage of our life together. I walked back into the house, the air thick with the cloying scent of betrayal and cheap perfume. Clara was in the shower, the sound of running water a pathetic attempt to wash away the sin. I walked past the bathroom and straight to her home office. It was time to go digging. Clara's office was always her sanctuary, a space I rarely entered unless invited. It was neat, organized, everything in its place, a perfect reflection of the person I thought she was. Now, it just looked like a crime scene. I sat down at her desk, the smooth, cold wood a stark contrast to the fire raging inside me. I knew her passwords, not because she told me, but because I knew her. I knew the way her mind worked. Her laptop password was our anniversary. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I typed it in. The screen lit up, a gateway to a secret life. My first instinct was to check her email, but I knew she'd be too smart for that. Anything incriminating would be long gone. I went straight for the recently deleted files. A few clicks, and I was in. There was a treasure trove of supposed junk, old drafts, corrupted downloads, random screenshots, but I knew what to look for. I started restoring files, one by one. Most were useless, remnants of her work as a freelance graphic designer. But then I found a folder labeled Project Phoenix. It was a cryptic name, but it sounded important. I opened it. Inside were a series of documents. The first was a detailed budget, not for a business project, but for a new life, a two-person life. There were line items for a down payment on a house in a city I'd never heard of, for new furniture, for a startup fund, for a new business venture. The numbers were staggering. They were siphoning money, a lot of it, from somewhere. I scrolled down, my heart pounding in my chest. At the bottom of the budget, there was a note. Initial transfer from the nest egg complete. The nest egg. That was what we called our joint savings account, the one we were meticulously filling for a down payment on a vacation home. I quickly logged into our online banking. I typed in the credentials, my fingers trembling. I pulled up the statement for the nest egg. My blood ran cold. There was a series of large, regular transfers to an account I didn't recognize, an account with a different bank. Each transfer was for a significant amount, just under the threshold that would trigger a notification to my phone. They'd been careful, so careful. The transfer started 2 years ago. 2 years! The entire length of their affair. They hadn't just been cheating on me, they'd been financing their new life with my money, our money. I felt sick. I leaned back in the chair, the room spinning around me. This wasn't just a moment of weakness, a spur-of-the-moment mistake. This was a conspiracy, a long-term, premeditated plan to build a future on the ashes of mine. I needed to find that other account. I searched through the rest of the restored files, looking for any clue, any hint of where the money was going. I found a text file, a simple note with a bank name and an account number. No name, just numbers. It was their secret stash. I stared at the screen, the digits burning into my retinas. This was it. This was the smoking gun. All I needed was the password. All I needed was the password. I had a sinking feeling I knew what it would be. It wouldn't be our anniversary. It would be something that belonged to them, something that celebrated their betrayal. I took a deep breath, opened a new browser tab, and navigated to the other bank's website. I typed in the account number. Then I paused, my hand hovering over the keyboard. What was the password? What was the key to their secret world? I thought about Leo, about his smug, confident demeanor, about the way he always thought he was the smartest guy in the room. I typed in his birthday. Incorrect. I tried Clara's. Incorrect. I thought about their first time, a date I could only guess at. I tried a few combinations, my frustration mounting with each failed attempt. Then I remembered something, a small, insignificant detail from a few months back. They had both been ecstatic about a big win at work, a deal that had secured the company's future. They had celebrated with a bottle of expensive champagne. I remembered the date. It was the day they had officially started their little side project. I typed in the date, formatted as a 6-digit number. The screen refreshed. The words, "Welcome, Leo," appeared. I was in. And what I saw on the next page would destroy any remaining fragment of the man I used to be. The account summary was a masterpiece of betrayal. The balance was enough to buy a small house, a testament to their dedication and my ignorance. But it was the transaction history that truly told the story. It was a meticulous ledger of their deception, a 2-year-long chronicle of my life being systematically dismantled. I scrolled through the entries, each one a fresh stab to the heart. There were deposits labeled consulting fee, bonus, and commission, all from our company's account. Leo, as a partner, had the authority to approve payments. He had been paying Clara, his business partner, out of company funds for services rendered. It was a brilliant, if not entirely original scheme. They were using our shared business as their personal piggy bank. I clicked on one of the deposits, a large one made 6 months ago. The attached memo read, Phoenix Project, Phase 1. The Phoenix Project, our secret project. The one that was supposed to secure our future, not theirs. I felt a wave of nausea. I had worked late nights and weekends on that project, pouring my heart and soul into it, all while they were using it as a cover to fund their escape. I kept scrolling. There were withdrawals for airline tickets to exotic locations I'd never been to, for hotel reservations for 2, for expensive dinners. I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar. The weekend I was at my mother's, helping her recover from surgery. The week I was in Seattle for a solo conference. The night they both had to work late to fix a server issue. It was all there. A perfect, overlapping pattern of lies. Every time I was out of the picture, they were living it up.
But the most gut-wrenching discovery was yet to come. I found a series of transfers labeled nest egg contribution. They were taking the money they had stolen from our company and depositing it into their secret account, then using that account to make the transfers from our joint savings, making it look like the money was moving between our own accounts. It was a shell game designed to hide their theft in plain sight. They weren't just stealing from me, they were making me an unwitting accomplice in my own financial ruin. I leaned back in the chair, the weight of it all crushing me. This wasn't just an affair, it was a hostile takeover. They hadn't just fallen in love, they had conspired to steal my life, my wife, my best friend, my business. It was all part of a grand, elaborate scheme. I thought about all the times Clara had asked me about my life insurance policy, the times Leo had casually mentioned the importance of a good succession plan. I had laughed it off, thinking they were just being practical. Now I saw it for what it was: reconnaissance. They were planning my exit, not just from the marriage, but from my own life.
The anger I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I saw the whole picture now, every ugly, twisted detail. There was no going back. There was no forgiveness. There was only one thing left to do: burn it all down. I started taking screenshots. I saved copies of the bank statements, the budget, the transaction history. I connected a portable hard drive to her laptop and began copying everything, every file, every email, every hidden folder. I was no longer just a husband who had been cheated on. I was a detective, a prosecutor, and a judge, all rolled into one. And I was building a case that would not just end my marriage, but would ensure that Clara and Leo would never be able to do this to anyone else again. I had the evidence, I had the motive, and now I had a plan. I wasn't just going to leave them, I was going to make them pay. The first rays of dawn were creeping through the blinds as I finished copying the last of the files. I had everything, a digital Pandora's box of their betrayal. I ejected the hard drive, slipped it into my pocket, and closed Clara's laptop, leaving it exactly as I had found it. I wanted her to think she was safe, to believe her secrets were still hidden. I walked out of her office, the house now feeling less like a home and more like a crime scene I had just finished processing. I could hear the shower upstairs had stopped. Clara would be coming down soon. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her voice, her excuses, her lies. I had all the answers I needed. I quietly slipped out the front door, the cool morning air a welcome relief from the suffocating atmosphere inside. I got in my car and drove, not with the aimless rage of the day before, but with a newfound sense of purpose. I knew exactly where I was going. I drove to a small, unassuming office building downtown, home to the city's most ruthless divorce and corporate litigation attorney. I had heard his name whispered in hushed, reverent tones at business functions. He was a shark, a pit bull in a suit, the kind of lawyer you hired when you wanted to burn your enemy to the ground and salt the earth where they stood. I walked into his office at 8 a.m., the first appointment of the day. The receptionist looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect. She'd seen this look before. I didn't have to wait long. The attorney, a man named Marcus Thorne, was exactly as I'd imagined, sharp, impeccably dressed, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. I didn't waste any time. I laid out the story, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. I told him about the affair, the 2-year-long deception, the secret bank account, the stolen money. I placed the hard drive on his desk. "Everything is on here," I said. "Bank statements, emails, financial records, a detailed budget for their new life. I've also documented the transfers from our company account." He listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he didn't offer sympathy or condolences. He just nodded, a slow, deliberate gesture. "This is comprehensive," he said, plugging the hard drive into his computer. He spent the next hour poring over the data, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The only sound in the room was the clicking of keys and the hum of his computer. Finally, he looked up, a glint of something that looked almost like admiration in his eyes. "We can destroy them," he said, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. This isn't just a divorce case, this is a multifaceted litigation strategy. We have grounds for a fault-based divorce, citing adultery and dissipation of marital assets. But more importantly, we have a rock-solid case for corporate theft and fraud. He explained the plan with a chilling precision. We would file for divorce immediately, seeking a temporary restraining order to freeze all of Clara's assets, including the secret account. We would simultaneously file a lawsuit against Leo and Clara, individually and corporately, for the embezzlement of company funds. We would seek not only the return of the stolen money, but also punitive damages, enough to bankrupt them both. They thought they were being clever, Marcus said, a thin, cruel smile playing on his lips. They left a paper trail a mile wide. They were arrogant, and that's their biggest weakness. They thought you were too trusting, too blind to ever look. They underestimated you. I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in a long time: power. I was no longer a victim. I was the one holding all the cards. I authorized Marcus to proceed with the plan. I wanted him to hit them with everything, to unleash the full, unbridled force of the law. I wanted them to feel the same helplessness, the same despair that I had felt when I walked into that bedroom. As I left his office, the sun was high in the sky. It was a new day, and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt a sliver of hope. It wasn't the hope of reconciliation, but the hope of retribution. The war had just begun, and I was ready to fight. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal maneuvering and quiet, calculated moves. Marcus was true to his word. The papers were filed, the motions were granted. A temporary restraining order was served, freezing Clara's access to all our joint accounts. The lawsuit against Leo and Clara was delivered to their offices, the official-looking documents a stark contrast to the casual, backstabbing nature of their betrayal. I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel, a nondescript room in a part of town where no one knew me. I needed to be away from it all, to process the storm I had unleashed. My phone, now turned back on, exploded with notifications. A barrage of calls and texts from Clara, each one more frantic than the last. Her messages had evolved from desperate pleas to angry accusations. "How could you do this? You're ruining everything. You're a monster." I read them all, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. She wasn't angry at me for what she had done. She was angry at me for finding out. She was angry at me for taking away her prize. Leo's calls were fewer, but more menacing. He left a series of voicemails, his voice a low growl. "You're making a big mistake, buddy. You don't know who you're messing with. This is going to cost you everything." I saved each one, forwarding them to Marcus. More evidence, more ammunition. On the third day, I decided it was time to go back to the house. I needed to get my things, to see the scene of the crime one last time. I drove over, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I didn't know what to expect. Would she be there? Would she have trashed the place? I walked in to find Clara sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of fear and defiance. The house was pristine, as if nothing had happened. It was all an illusion, just like our marriage. She started talking the moment I walked in, her words a torrent of justifications and excuses. "It just happened," she said, her voice cracking. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. He understood me in a way you never did. We were going to pay you back. We were going to leave you the business." It was a pathetic, desperate performance, and I wasn't buying it. I didn't say a word. I just walked past her, up the stairs, and into our bedroom. The bed was made, the sheets clean, as if she could wash away the memory of what had happened there. I started packing my clothes, my movements methodical and efficient. I wasn't taking much, just the essentials. The rest of it, the furniture, the art, the trinkets we had collected over the years, it was all tainted. It was all part of the lie. I was zipping up my last bag when Clara appeared in the doorway. "Please," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "can we just talk?" I finally looked at her, really looked at her. I didn't see the woman I had loved for 10 years. I saw a stranger,
A cold, calculating stranger who had been living a double life right under my nose. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice flat and cold. "Your lawyer will be in touch with mine." I picked up my bags and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, speechless. As I walked down the stairs, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "You're not going to believe this," he said, his voice tinged with a grim satisfaction. "Leo just tried to liquidate his shares in the company. He tried to sell them to a competitor. But he forgot about the little clause you put in the partnership agreement, the one that gives you right of first refusal, and the one that prevents him from selling to a direct competitor without your consent." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, a slow smile spreading across my face. "He just breached his contract," Marcus continued. "He just handed us the company on a silver platter. Not only do we have grounds to void his sale, but we can sue him for damages. We own him, Clara, and everything they've been trying to build." I hung up the phone and looked at Clara, who was watching me from the top of the stairs, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. She didn't know it yet, but her world was about to come crashing down, harder and more completely than she could have ever imagined. The checkmate was coming. The final act of this sordid drama played out not in a courtroom, but in the stark, unforgiving light of public opinion and financial ruin. Marcus, with the precision of a master surgeon, dismantled their lives piece by piece. The lawsuit for corporate theft was the first domino to fall. With the evidence I had gathered,
It was an open and shut case. Leo was forced to repay every cent he had stolen, plus punitive damages that wiped out his personal finances. His shares in our company were forfeited as part of the settlement, making me the sole owner. The business I had built with my best friend was now mine, a bittersweet victory that felt more like a consolation prize for a life lost. Clara's fate was sealed in the divorce proceedings. The evidence of adultery and the deliberate dissipation of our marital assets meant she walked away with next to nothing. The house, our primary residence, was put on the market, the proceeds to be divided after her debts were paid. The nest egg, our joint savings, was returned to me in full. Her secret account, the Phoenix Project, was frozen and its contents seized. She was left with nothing but the clothes on her back and a mountain of legal debt. The final blow came from an unexpected source, the local news. A reporter, always on the lookout for a juicy story about a local business, got wind of the lawsuit. The headline read, "Local logistics firm embroiled in embezzlement scandal involving partner and owner's wife." The article was a detailed, damning account of their affair and their scheme to defraud the company. Their names were dragged through the mud. Their reputations in our small, tight-knit business community were destroyed. No one would hire them. No one would trust them. Their grand plan for a new life, a new business, a new beginning was ashes. I sold the company a few months later. I couldn't bear to walk into those offices every day, a constant reminder of the betrayal. The sale, coupled with the settlement from Leo, left me in a more secure financial position than I had ever been. But the money felt hollow, a poor substitute for the trust and love that had been stolen from me. I moved to a new city, 1,000 miles away. I bought a small, quiet condo overlooking a lake. I spent my days hiking, reading, and trying to piece together the person I was before the lie. It was a slow, arduous process. There were days when the anger would resurface, a hot, bitter taste in my mouth. There were nights when I would wake up, the image of them in my bed burned into my memory. But as the months turned into a year, the pain began to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. I was free. Free from the deception, free from the toxicity, free from the life that was never really mine. One afternoon, I received an email from an old friend. It contained a link to a news article about Leo and Clara. They had been arrested for a minor fraud scheme, a pathetic attempt to recoup their losses. The article included a grainy mugshot of them both, their faces gaunt and defeated. I looked at the picture for a long moment, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger, just a profound sense of indifference. They were no longer a part of my story. I closed the tab, shutting the door on them for the last time. I walked out onto my balcony, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. I took a deep breath, the cool, clean air filling my lungs. I had lost everything, but in the wreckage, I have found myself. And as I looked out at the vast, endless horizon, I knew that this was just the beginning. The end of their story was the start of mine.